Welcome to the May 11th meeting of the City of Lake Forest Plan Commission. My name is John Dixon, and I am chairman of the Plan Commission. Thank you all for being here this evening. It's great to have you here. At this time, I'd like to ask the members of the commission to introduce themselves. I'll start with my far left.
Steve LaMontagne.
Louis Pickus.
Jamie Moorhead.
Mark Pasquazi. Barrett Davey.
And from the City of Lake Forest, we have Kathy Siernek here tonight. The first item before the commission this evening is consideration of the commission minutes from March 9th meeting. Are there any comments, questions, clarifications in regards to the meeting minutes that were in our packets? Hearing none, do I have a motion to accept those minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The first matter before the commission this evening is a special use permit for Sophia Steak Lake Forest at 181 Laurel Avenue. Property partially located within 150 feet of property zoned residential. At this point, I'd like to ask the commission members if there's any conflicts of interest or ex parte communications in regards to this matter.
No.
None.
Hearing none. At this point, I'd like to swear everyone in that is going to testify tonight or who thinks they might testify in either support or opposition of this matter, not only of the first item, but of the second item. We'll take care of this all at once. So if you would just please stand where you are currently and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear to state that the testimony you shall give in this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Good. I will ask the petitioner to come forward to the podium for the presentation, the petitioner for Sophia Steak. And as the petitioner is coming forward, I would like to personally apologize again on the record to the petitioner and to Mr. Kiefer. The Plan Commission did not have a quorum at our April 13th meeting. And as chairman, that mistake was my fault. In hindsight, trying to have that meeting the week of holiday Easter week was too difficult, and we certainly appreciate your patience. Welcome back, and again, we apologize to you, Mr. Kiefer. Please state your name for the record.
My name is Glenn Kiefer. I'm one of three partners at Sophia Steak Lake Forest. Apologies not necessary. We somehow got a demolition permit the next morning, so we were very happy. So we got things going.
Good.
But I thought it might be worthwhile to kind of tell a little story about who we are and what kind of experience we have, so maybe it can help put you at ease of what kind of operators we are. So we opened Lake Forest, Wilmette, Sophia. Our opening day was Friday the 13th, March 20th, the day they closed down the state of Illinois. When I opened our restaurant in Chicago, Kiefer's, it was 2 weeks after 9/11. And when we opened up our restaurant opposite Millennium Park, it was right in the middle of the recession. So you may want to short the market. But this is our team, Ryan and Anna O'Donnell, who met at our restaurant at Kiefer's back in the mid-2000s. Anna was a server, Ryan was a manager, and HR was very concerned. So this is John Ferrer and Brianne, who's right here with us today. That's our group of management. Myself, Doug Saltis, who used to be the P&R PM. He operates our Andros Taverna down in Logan Square. Carrie and Sarah Wood are partners with us at Pomeroy. These are other partners down in the city. Billy Lawless, who's got a great spot on Michigan Avenue. And these are our six. We have six going on. Well, we got seven now. We just opened up Buck Russell's, a sandwich shop in Wilmette. So that's the look of the restaurant. It's, understated. We do have outdoor seating at Sophia and Wilmette. It's kind of a clubby interior. We expect the application to be very much the same here. We have 20 tables. Our neighbors were very kind to let us put our tables out in front of their businesses during COVID when we were shut down, and we weren't able to really operate much inside. So we made it thanks to our neighbors, and I think that's part of what we want to talk about here tonight is that there's a menu, and we got great steaks, but we also have a nice burger, which we'll do the same here. During COVID, we had the opportunity to put a tent up in our parking lot, and we had neighbors that lived right behind us in a condo building, and we had a meeting somewhat like this, although it was virtual. And it was a downtown business district, and the commission there, the planning commission said, you know, you can go ahead and put a tent up. And our neighbors were so strongly opposed to it, we decided not to put the tent up. It was right behind our building on our parking lot. Sure, some of it was the fact we didn't think tents are all that healthy during COVID, but we also want you to know that first thing we want to be is a good neighbor. And we also have a business to run. So I think the three things that have come up that seem to be recurring are parking, employee parking, and how we're going to control that. Just like any other work rule that we have at our restaurants, we'll write that into our handbook. And if we find that people are violating that rule, it's a work rule like any other. We'll do coaching councils, and if necessary, we'll terminate employees that don't follow the rules. We know that street parking is not something that our employees should be doing, and we'll more than likely, I would say 99%, have valet because it seems to remedy a couple of things at the same time. It keeps us in control of the parking, so we can go down to the parking lot behind the train tracks on, what is that, Midland? McKinley. Thank you. So I think valet will be really important. We'll control the way that our employees where they're parking. We understand that we don't want them parking on public streets. The second thing that came up quite a bit was, I think Dick brought this up about odor. We don't have char broilers. We have a steak broiler, which is a completely different animal. It doesn't create, it's not hard fuel. And I think that you'll find that the kind of smoke emitted from there or odors of there are much more easily tolerable. We're not without some. It is a restaurant. It's a business, and it's going to be a busy restaurant, we hope. And the third one seems to be the noise factor. We got this last set of proposed conditions for approval. The first one is amplified music. And I got to tell you, I've been in this business since 1969. I started as a busboy when I was 14 in Amityville, New York. And when you walk into a restaurant, if it sounds like this, it's kind of hard to get people interested. So I understand that there's a rule about this, but we would really appreciate the opportunity to put some light music out there, never live music, and off by 9 o'clock. But our pro forma is that we use that patio, and we're happy to be done by 10:30, it says here, Sunday through Thursday, no problem. 11:30 on Friday and Saturday, no problem. To be honest with you, the earlier the better for me. I'm too old to hang it, doing this anymore. And we know that not much good happens after midnight. So those seem to be the things that came up most often. What else should I be talking about to make you feel comfortable?
Maybe we thank you very much, Mr. Kiefer. Maybe we'll turn at this point in the presentation to the city and identifications of issues. We would turn to Ms. Cerniak.
Thank you, Chairman Dixon, members of the commission. This request is before you because the code does require that restaurants located within 150 feet of a residential zoning district may only be approved through the special use permit process. I know in previous discussions, some members of this commission have suggested that we relook at that requirement as we go through the comprehensive plan, and we certainly will do that, but that requirement is in place today. And that requirement really recognizes that the elongated central business district in Lake Forest, in many areas, there is an immediate adjacency to multifamily residential and single-family residential. So the special use permit process, as you know, allows for the opportunity for public comment, public discussion, and if determined to be appropriate, conditions of approval. This particular space was originally approved for a restaurant use when the whole building was being adaptively reused. It was originally Knaus showroom for vehicles, and I believe that was in 2003. The grill on Laurel was issued a special use permit to allow the restaurant to operate there. Following that, there was a kind of a partnership with Marcus Lemonis, and then he solely operated the restaurant. But the space has been vacant now for a number of years. As the former municipal services site, the 10-acre site immediately to the north, was redeveloped with 110 units, multifamily and single-family. This site really became the focus of much discussion. We received many, many questions, many inquiries about when a restaurant was going to return to this area. So there is certainly interest in having a restaurant locate here. I agree with Mr. Kiefer that the key areas of focus, the areas of discussion, seem to be amplified music. Currently, the city code prohibits outdoor speakers or amplified sound in the commercial business district. So that is a requirement of the code. It certainly doesn't prohibit music and speakers inside, but there is a prohibition on amplified music outside. Second issue is parking. This site is uniquely located, uniquely sited. It does have the benefit of having some interior parking. There's a garage at the west end of the building. When the Grill on Laurel was located at this spot, I recall in the evenings that valet parking was permitted in that underground garage. There is ample customer parking on Western Avenue. In fact, as part of the redevelopment of this property, the then developer was required to fund improvements for parking on the east side of Western Avenue. You may recall that previously all of that was parallel parking, so they were required to put in that diagonal parking. As part of the redevelopment of the municipal services site, more diagonal parking was required of that developer. So as you go to the north, there's additional diagonal parking. So there is considerable amount of on-street parking for customers. As was noted by Mr. Kiefer, there also is ample parking on the east side of the railroad tracks, about a block and a half, 2 blocks away, down Western under the viaduct on Woodland, and then right up into the north end of the city parking lots. Those lots are not permitted, do not require permits in the evening, so those are open for valet parking or for employee parking. So amplified sound, parking, and then hours of operation really is the third issue that city staff have heard. And there's a couple components to hours of operation. Certainly, this is a special use permit, and because of that, hours can be established. Setting the special use permit aside, the city's liquor license allows the service of alcohol until midnight, and that is indoor, outdoor, any business that has a liquor license issued by the city council. You did receive, Mr. Wood, thank you, he provided a summary of operating hours for many businesses. What we found is that operating hours and permitted hours often differ, and that restaurants that are approved to stay open until 11 or 10:30, if there isn't business, they don't stay open that late. I did review some of the earlier special use permits, and the special use permit for the grill, which was approved in 2003, allowed the courtyard to be open until 10 p.m. The Coro Bistro special use permit, Coro Bistro is located on the southwest corner of Western and Woodland. The special use permit for Coro Bistro allows the patio to be open until 11. Cleanup also needs to be completed by 11. And Duffers, which is a restaurant that this commission recently saw proposed also in Westwood Square, the condition for that development, or for that restaurant, required that outdoor seating end no later than 30 minutes after the close of the business. So there are various different requirements that apply. What we have seen is that in recent years, in order to retain and attract high-quality restaurants, the City Council has encouraged staff to be more flexible with hours. Certainly through the pandemic, we saw greater interest in outdoor seating. As different special use permits have been looked at, the consideration has often been given to the type of restaurant. Perhaps a beer, burger, and rock and roll place may have different hours for an outdoor patio than a restaurant such as Sophia Steak. The location of the patio in relation to residential, whether it's facing immediately toward residential, whether it's shielded by buildings and facing toward a busier street, that has also been taken into consideration. So there is some randomness to the hours, there is some difference, but again, what we see in Lake Forest is very rarely do we see outdoor patio areas being used or the limits being pressed and people sitting out there at midnight or 1 in the morning. You do have a staff report and recommendation in support of this project. You have findings addressing the various applicable criteria, and you do have a recommendation for 8 conditions of approval. I won't go through those. Those are on pages 6 and 7 of your staff report. If you choose to do so, it will be appropriate to forward a recommendation to the City Council at the end of your discussion tonight, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
I'll start off with the questions back to you, Kathy. So just so I understand, what is, just for clarification, what is the closing time that we're talking about here under this special use permit?
The staff report, as currently written, condition number 5 states use of an activity on the patio in any form which is intended to include cleanup is not permitted after 10:30 p.m. Sunday through Thursday, or after 11:30 p.m. on Friday and Saturday. And then there is a sentence, cleanup activity must be completed within the permitted times noted above. So
Okay.
10:30 Sunday through Thursday, 11:30 Friday and Saturday is the staff recommended condition. Certainly open for your discussion.
And then the other question I have is on the speakers. You know, are you saying no speakers outside? I heard Mr. Kiefer make a request, I think, for some music outside. Mr. Kiefer, is that correct? Some music outside, yes.
The code specifically states in the B1, 2, 3, and 4 districts that no outdoor sound or no outdoor speakers or amplified sound is permitted. So the staff recommendation is consistent with that recommendation or with that requirement in the code. This is a special use permit. If you wanted to make a different recommendation to the City Council, that certainly is your prerogative, but from the staff perspective, because that is written so clearly in the code, perhaps it's something that could be looked at in the future and changed, but we felt that because it's in the code, the staff recommendation needed to be consistent with that.
But that, that doesn't preclude live music, though, correct?
Acoustic, well, go ahead.
Live music is allowed,
If it's not amplified.
amplified. Thank you.
So let's just and that's a great question, Commissioner Lamontagne. So you know, if somebody's out there with a guitar, then let's just break this down very simply for musically inclined like myself. So someone's playing with a guitar, that would be allowed, is that correct?
Correct, without a speaker and without amplification.
Okay.
So Kathy, on that note, if you don't mind.
Please.
That was specifically, no amplified music or speakers was a part of the grill's special use permit, correct?
Correct.
Is there a reason that was specifically addressed when it seems to be part of the central business district's overall ordinance?
It was a significant concern, so it was re-emphasized by including it in the special use permit. If it is not specifically called out in the special use permit, and if the code was changed, then the code would prevail,
I see.
if that makes sense.
But currently, there are no restaurants in the central business district with outdoor speakers.
There are none that are permitted to have outdoor speakers. I can't
I
speak.
think that's a
You know
good,
why
I
I
mean,
asked, you know
because,
why I asked the question.
yeah, I certainly, not to call anybody out, but I have a recollection, it could be wrong, of some other establishments where there is, and I see some other commissioners nodding their head, where there is some music that's played outdoors at some venues within
I-
the central
I will
business
note that
district
during
area.
the pandemic, when we had tents in various parking lots, there were many code requirements that we relaxed.
No, I'm talking about before that. I certainly understand that, and I have a recollection of that, and I'm looking around and seeing some heads nodding that,
And we would enforce that on a complaint basis. So if we haven't received complaints, we're not made aware of it, that's why I would say they aren't permitted, but I can't say there are none.
okay?
Can I ask a clarifying question just back on the hours? So the hours that you're suggesting, or that the staff is recommending in here, 10:30 weekdays and the 11:30, is there no difference in terms of what's being proposed for the outdoor patio, or is that different hours? So I thought I heard you say something different.
These are outdoor patio hours, I assumed. Am I wrong?
These are, condition 5 specifically speaks to the activity on the patio.
Got it.
But I can tell you that if we're ever at work after midnight, I'd be shocked and not happy. I mean, maybe the manager's in the office putting, distributing the tips or doing paperwork, but we're out.
No, the liquor license does not allow any service of alcohol after midnight. So if those employees who were doing paperwork were drinking, that could become a police enforcement issue.
So if your closing time on the patio was 11 instead of 11:30 on weekends, would that affect your pro forma, your business model?
Well, we're going to be taking reservations up till 9 o'clock, at least. That's common. At least we think that this operation will be much like the Wilmette store. And we do get reservations at 9 or 9:30. The typical dine time is 2 hours. So I think we need the 11:30 to make it. We're going to be about $100 ahead. The last thing we want to do is chase people out the door.
Right.
So, yeah, part of the pro forma is getting that 9:30 reservation, enough time to finish and not feel rushed.
And Kathy, was there a similar discussion with the Coro Bistro with their 11 o'clock closing time? Did they have some issue with that?
As far as wanting the later hour, yes, it's all with the hope that they will have those later seatings, and I assume if experience shows that you don't have those, you'll be disappointed, but you're not going to remain open.
No, and the bar is for the convenience of the dining guest. If we have no diners, we're more than happy to cut our labor, especially now that dishwashers are $20 an hour. So we are, of course, running our business to run the business and, be able to pay our debts and our, we've got a lot of money invested in this space. But if we have no business late at night, we won't be there.
We have continually heard that perhaps Lake Forest needs to do a better job of balancing various interests and being somewhat flexible with businesses to assure that they, number one, want to come here, and number two, have the ability to be successful.
So Kathy, did I hear you correctly that the Coro Bistro SUP currently allows for them to have outdoor courtyard seating until 11:30 p.m.?
including cleanup.
including cleanup, and that's within 150 feet of a residential district
Correct.
as well. Thank you.
But that,
That was 11:30 or 11? At 11.
11 is what's in Coro Bistro.
Oh, I'm sorry, I wrote
11:05. Yep.
11:30, okay.
I'm
it's
sorry.
11. Okay, got it.
That's,
Thank you.
just to be clear, that's the permitted hours, is till 11, is until 11? Do they actually
the-
keep it open until 11, or do they have
Right.
different operating hours? Because you mentioned there's a distinction for many of these businesses, so.
My experience is that the operating hours fluctuate, depending on the weather, depending on the season, perhaps depending on whether we're close to a holiday or not. There are times when we hear people go to a restaurant and it's closed because there was no business, so.
Mr.
Sorry.
Kiefer, what, in your experience with the Winnetka location, how many diners would you say are there at 11 PM on a Friday and Saturday?
I would say that we still have about 50 to 60 diners there still. And a lot of that has been just the success of Pomeroy, where what we call the shoulders of the reservation book get filled because people can't get in the middle. I don't know if that'll be a permanent thing. I hope so, but yeah, there's usually a pretty good handful, but by 11:30, we're pretty well cleared out. And I would say, if we've ever closed after midnight, I'd be shocked. And I'm certainly not there at that time, but there's not a lot of late night. It's Friday and Saturdays we get some of that, but during the week it clears up by 9:30, 10. Unless you get a holiday, sometimes we'll get like a Sunday, a national holiday and a Monday, 4th of July, that kind of thing. And then that'll change things just a little bit, but by and large, we're done by 9:30, 10.
and then, how many seats are you planning on having indoors, and how many seats are you planning on having outdoors?
The current plan is to have about 150 in, and the outdoor about 80.
Did you say 80?
80.
Okay.
Are there any other questions for city or for city staff or the petitioner from the commissioners at this time? Thank you, Mr. Kiefer. You can have a seat for a moment.
Thank you.
Now we'd open it up to the public testimony. Anybody wishing to speak this evening, please come forward to the podium and state your name for the record and spell your last name and state your address, please.
Hi, my name is Dick Wood. I live at 1032 Northwestern Avenue with my wife, who's in the audience with me, and I am speaking on behalf of the Regents Row Homeowners Association. So if I go beyond the time limit, hopefully I'll get some leeway because I'm basically speaking for 20 units, and if we need to, we'll bring all 20 next time. And my comments are supported by those of the association who responded to the comments that I submitted for the last meeting. And I will accept the apology for the missing last meeting to the other member of the homeowners association who was here for that meeting. I wasn't. But I want to start by saying we really support this restaurant. Many of our owners have dined at their Winnetka, Wilmette restaurants. My wife and I have dined at at least one of their downtown restaurants, and they're quality operations, and they're operations that this city deserve. But we are here to address two major issues, maybe some minor, but the major, the elephant in the room is hours and noise. We talked about Coro Bistro. We live very near Coro Bistro. The outdoor seating area there is about this size, maybe 4 or 5 tables. We heard them say maybe 80 outside. That will hold 100, 120 if they want to. It's a huge area, and especially if they spill over into the sidewalks, which prior owners did. Those many people can make a lot of noise. So let me tell you about where we live. For those who are not familiar with Regents Row, we too have invested a lot in our properties. I think that Regents Row is one of the premier housing developments in the city, known for its architecture, which have been mentioned in recent hearings for places across the street, et cetera. So what is our configuration? 10 of our units, including ours, they're 4 stories. The second story is our outdoor living space. It's a small patio, but it faces directly at the building where this restaurant will be. We spend a lot of time out there in the summer. I can add parenthetically that when it was being built, I wanted to put outdoor speakers in, and the city said no. It's wired for them, though, so I can put them in. And of course, now with wireless speakers, it's not an issue. We can create music outside if we want. But, and I'll be honest, one of our homeowners suggested they'd like background music out there, as long as it ends by 9 o'clock. So again, we get back to hours. Our master bedrooms are also facing that restaurant. They're on the top floor, and we know that we will hear noise because there have been restaurants there before. And I don't want to have to turn on air conditioning to drown out noise. I love sleeping with windows open. And frankly, I don't want to admit too much of my personal life, but I'm usually in bed by 10:30 on every day of the week. So I think, Kathy, forwarded to you, we went through, my wife and I, and looked at other restaurants, including those from Lake Forest, Lake Bluff, the Ballyhoo Group, Highwood, Lake Colonial. And it's pretty eye-opening that even the Ballyhoo groups all say they close at 10:30. So I just don't know where we are going with an 11:30 closing time in Lake Forest. The Deer Path Inn, their 3 restaurants all say they close at 10. Everett Farms, a new restaurant out west, 9. Francesco's, 10. The Gallery, 9. Coro, 9. Apparently in its SUP it has later, but it just, for whatever reason, it closes at 9. So, our feeling is that diners should be off the patio by 10, no later than 10:30. But certainly not 11 or 11:30. That is clearly going to disrupt our homeowners and probably certainly those to the north in the Kelmscott development who also have outdoor patio seating facing the restaurant. So that's where I stand on 10, latest 10:30 on use of the patio. Odors, and I'm not speaking now just to believe it or not, to Sophia's, but as I did research for this, odors of restaurants are going to become a growing issue in the next 5 to 10 years. There was a study by Carnegie Mellon, and they did studies in downtown Pittsburgh and they were able to distinguish restaurant odors from car exhaust during a rush hour period, say 5 to 7, and they were absolutely equal in terms of what they do to the environment. We did meet with a representative of Sophia's Monday. He assures us that they're going to have state-of-the-art equipment and et cetera, and all we can do in that is take their word for it and use the complaint process if we smell odors, as we did with Grill on Laurel and MLG. So I do have to hand out to you something I didn't prepare, which would be a red line of 2 provisions that we would like to see changed based on the staff recommendation. So Kathy, with your permission, may I hand these to the board members?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Directly from your website. I'm out. I don't even have one for myself. So basically, that would just be my language change suggested for the hours of operation. I mean, we have no problem with the indoor diners staying till 11, 11:30. They're not going to bother us, but the size of that patio, the number of people, and the noise that they can create is definitely going to impact us. It's definitely going to impact our comfort of the use of our property, and if it's as bad as it could be, may may well affect our property values. So that concludes my comments, and thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wood. Is there any other public testimony on this matter? Anyone else wishing to speak? Any final questions from commissioner members back either to the petitioner or staff? Anyone? I'll turn back to you, Mr. Kiefer, the petitioner. Would you like to add any final comments about anything that was said either by from the public testimony or from some of the discussions that have taken place so far?
Only in as much as I like to clarify that when we add a closing time on our website, it's for the convenience of our guests so they know when the kitchen closes. That's not when we toss everybody out the door. That's it.
Thank you.
I do have a clarifying question for the petitioner. Just on the music piece, what are you proposing for the music? Speakers or live music?
What we typically use is some small speakers just to energize the space so that when our guests walk in, it doesn't feel like this.
But for clarification, you're talking inside, speakers inside or speakers outside?
Outside.
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 Okay, thank
We
you.
assume, at no time will we have loud music anywhere, but outside, there's just to energize the space and just, if you come in and you have a conversation from one table to the next, and just some light background music to facilitate that start of the evening is critical. Like I said, by 9 o'clock, we'd be happy to have it closed off.
Thank you. Any additional comments from staff?
Nothing further.
At this time, the testimony and comment period is closed. At this point in the process, we have discussions and comments with just the commissioner members. I'll start off here this evening and talk about the broader issues first. Obviously, the petitioner here is a very successful restaurant operator for the last 40 years, has 2 other successful restaurants, or more than that, actually, pardon me, several other successful restaurants currently. On this particular site, on and off over the last 20 years, there has been a restaurant located on this site, just for making sure that everybody in the audience and those listening at home realize that. We have gotten and received almost 20 letters. Most of them are from the Homeowners Association there, located on Printers Row. Regents Row. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Wood. And obviously, the bigger issues really seem to be coming down to hours of operation, music. It seems as if the venting, fan issues, the parking, and the lighting, those obviously, I think, are all, there's no real dispute as to those, and I think the staff has made good recommendations on those as well. So maybe at this point, I'll see what other commissioners have a comment. Obviously, I think we're zeroing in on the times and the music. So, Commissioner Lamontagne, do you have? I'll look to you to start.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I want to say thank you to the petitioner. So, you run a great operation, and obviously, thank you for wanting to come to Lake Forest. So we're excited to have something of your caliber here. And I know it's been difficult through the pandemic and whatnot, and to come in and want to open a new restaurant with all of the unknowns out there and the recovery. So I just want to say thank you for that first and foremost. It's very clear based on your presentation tonight that you want to be a good neighbor, and you've shown that with others as well. And I would agree with the chairman on the issues related to the venting and cleaning, and I think working with the city and the parking as well, that you'll come to great terms with the city staff, and they'll enforce as needed. It really comes down to, I think, less from my perspective, it comes down less to around, I don't have any objections to the time for the restaurant open for the indoor activities. It really comes down to the patio. And I heard a couple of different things from Mr. Wood, and one, the letter that he passed out said 10 o'clock, but I heard that there may be some flex for 10:30 for outdoor patio use. That's where I would propose and support and be supportive of this, not having people on the patio up until 11:30 at night, given the fact that we've got close neighbors. And the other is around the music, and I think in some ways that becomes a bit more difficult because there isn't a precedent in terms of the planning commission, having, allowed for that through a special use permit in the past. I'm open to and understand that, like, you need to break a bit of the conversation. The question is how do you do that without it being disruptive? And that cannot be live background music, certainly no amplification. Is there, some, I'm making this up, some limitations of music type where it's background, almost white noise kind of music that still initiates the conversation that you're talking about and doesn't allow for me to hear the conversation that's happening at the next table, which I think is a really important point. And that's really where I want to hear from the other commission members as well, on the music side.
Thank you for those comments. Commissioner Pickus?
I'll also thank you for your patience and your willingness to come to Lake Forest. We're going to be happy to have you here. I'll address the sound issue. I think on the sound issue, I think there's a way to get a happy medium here, despite what the code says. I think there could be a provision for allowing some amplified music, and there could be sound tests from Regents Row so that the sound isn't over a certain decibel range, so that maybe it's indistinguishable from the sound of the patrons having dinner, and a cutoff time, 9 o'clock. So I think there's a way to find a medium there where they can get what they want and also satisfy the neighbors. So Kathy, maybe that's something that staff could work with the petitioner on to work that out and the neighbors. So I think there's a path there. The hours is a tough one. I'm sympathetic to the petitioner about wanting to take the late reservations, have the casual dining experience. I think cutting off at 10:30 I think is a little short. I opt for 11. I think 11 is probably more reasonable.
Inside or outside? Just
Outside.
Thank you.
Yeah, inside I think I don't think matters. I trust the petitioner that they're not going to be serving people after midnight. And then I think on the odor thing, the odor thing is really tough because it's very, very subjective. And I think the way the staff wrote their recommendation, I think is probably sufficient. Those are my comments.
Thank you. Commissioner Moorhead?
Thank you. On the sound, the audio sound outside, if the city code is clear that there's no amplified sound, then I can't see how this commission could obviate applicable law. So that what would have to happen is the city council would have to amend the code to allow for amplified sound.
I think we can recommend to the city council, though, in our decision here this evening, what we'd like. Obviously, we're not a legislative body,
Right.
but we can make that recommendation to the city council, and the city council can act accordingly.
Okay. In that case, I still don't see a reason to allow the amplified sound. And then on the patio usage, the petitioner said there were approximately 80 outdoor seats, but I looked at the first floor plan in the petition, I count 104 seats. It's not a gotcha, but seems to be a high intensity of use. I would be comfortable if it were in compliance with the Coro Bistro special use permit of 11 o'clock. Just looking at Google Maps, roughly, it looks like the patios for both spaces are approximately the same distance from residential use. So those are my two comments.
Commissioner Pasquesi?
All right, so the three things we started here with were the amplified noise. It's not under our purview necessarily. I agree with Commissioner Pickus. I'd like to try and find a way to accommodate petitioner's request to have some background music to provide a more pleasurable dining experience. And I think what Commissioner Pickus proposed is a good one. Parking doesn't seem, I'm fine with what was discussed or presented by the petitioners. Hours of operation, I'm inclined to, I'm in favor of supporting the petitioner's request for 10:30 Sunday through Thursday and 11:30 on the weekends. And my reasons are a few. First, the city of Lake Forest is actively trying to create a vibrant business district. And I think this is important to welcome restaurants to an environment that hopefully will allow them to be successful. And I think the challenges of a restaurant are difficult enough, and limiting their hours is just going to make it that much more difficult. And when you think about the outdoor patio, it's summer months only. It's, on nice days or nice nights only. I just think it's not a significant constellation to allow this restaurant and this petitioner the opportunity to be successful. And keep in mind that the Grill on Laurel was granted their special use permit in 2004 with a 10 o'clock outdoor patio. I think that was correct, right? 10 o'clock for the Grill on Laurel, their courtyard or SUP. The Regent's Row was built after that. So when was it built?
Before that.
Okay. Most, if not all, of the residents there purchased their homes there, their properties there, after the Grill on Laurel was there, and so did so knowingly. And I think that's one of the things about, living in town, so to say. There are certainly benefits to it, but there are also some nuances to living in town or close to town. And I think some of these minor inconveniences are some of that. So I'd be in favor of supporting the petitioner's hours of operation as proposed in the petition.
Thank you, Commissioner Pasquesi. Commissioner Davey.
Yeah, I'm gonna, again, say thank you as well to not only the petitioner, but to their neighbors. Appreciate the thought that went into the comments and the support for those comments. I do echo Commissioner Pasquesi's comments about supporting a vibrant central business district. I'm generally more inclined to support the overall staff recommendation, given all the work that they put into it, the effort and the supporting research here. I guess can I ask a question at this point still to
Please,
the
yes.
city? So, so Mr. Wood had made a comment about the city's noise ordinance in his letter to us, and I'm not familiar with what the noise ordinance is, and maybe I should be, but I'm not. So I'm just curious as to kind of what that is and how we enforce that, and because that goes to a second comment I want to make.
The general noise ordinance or noise provisions in the code can be superseded by other more restrictive requirements. The noise ordinance is pretty, I have it in front of me and I'm looking for the provision. And this is not in the zoning code. This is in the nuisance portion of the code, which is the responsibility of the police to enforce. It shall be unlawful to cause or to make unreasonable loud noise in any depot, store, theater, street, alley, sidewalk, park, or other public place, or any place frequented by the public in the city. It shall also be unlawful to cause or make unreasonable loud noise at any point on or beyond the boundary of any lot, whether privately owned or public, which such unreasonable noise interferes with the quiet enjoyment of adjoining lots or lots within 1,000 feet of the location from which the noise is emanating. So the code relies on the term unreasonable
Right.
from a police enforcement. One thought in listening to your comments that occurred to me, Chairman, I believe you may have suggested that a recommendation could be forwarded to the city council to relook at the provision in the zoning code relating to the business districts. If you wanted to forward a recommendation that could perhaps be something like this, recommend that the city council direct staff to review the current prohibition of outdoor speakers and amplified sound and consider language that would allow low-level background music on restaurant patios in some capacity. If you wanted to forward that recommendation and then in this particular special use permit, not include a prohibition on amplified music because technically it is already prohibited by the code, then it's prohibited by the code unless the code is changed. A change to the zoning code, the council would need to direct that to the plan commission to hold a public hearing. So, did that make sense? It's a bit convoluted, I apologize.
Yeah, no, I get it.
Yeah, so I guess.
Go ahead,
So,
do you-
by the way, thank you for all that, and I'm glad that you came up with that suggestion, because I do think a recommendation on this front is probably pretty important.
Yes.
For the future. I think in many of the concerns that were raised in the correspondence, it seems like are being addressed, recognize that this hours and these music issues are kind of seem to be the central kind of sticking points at this point. But I think generally I support the staff's recommendation, and I do think it's worth, making a recommendation to, we're not gonna slow down their ability to get moving on this restaurant, if we don't have an objectively defined answer on this music issue in the short run. And we could make a recommendation to the city council to look at that issue.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that as well. And on the hours piece, particularly after hearing Commissioner Pasquazi's point on the 11:30, I would support based on your argument as well.
Plus, the city council can come back too and say, hey, we like the hours, but we don't like the patio hours, and we're
Yeah.
gonna take them down. And that's their decision to make.
Right.
To some
And
degree.
there was one other comment I forgot to make that in my notes about, these are maximum allowable hours. If it's a Tuesday night, they may, and nobody's there, they're gonna close early, or, so these are, I'd rather allow them the opportunity to stay open as long as they can to be successful. They can certainly shorten their hours if the business just isn't there, whatever, but they'll never be able to go in the opposite direction if we prohibit them.
I'd just add also in regards to the discussion that we're having on the outdoor terrace and living area is to put it into perspective. We live in the Midwest, you haven't been able to sit outside yet so far this year, and it's the 11th of May. So I would imagine between rain and cold weather, you're at the end of the day maybe only talking on a conservative basis of 40 days outside, on and off, I would imagine, between May and, I see some people shaking their heads, maybe it's heat lamps. Okay, but heat lamps aren't going to be effective when it's raining out or snowing out, or I think that there are certainly pandemic reasons that people want to sit outside and have fresh air, so maybe those days are longer, but it still is the Midwest, and when people are going to gravitate more to being inside probably versus outside with inclement weather. And I do think also in summer months, hot summer months, I do believe that people, and maybe Mr. Wood is the exception, but I do think, most people are going to have their windows closed and have an air conditioning on when it's 90 degrees out, 80 degrees out. I'm not here to debate that. I certainly respect and know many of the neighbors there on Regents Row, and certainly appreciated all their comments that we received here this evening. I think all of that has to be balanced against in my opinion, the petitioner that's before us, the track record that they have in other very high-end communities similar to Lake Forest here on the North Shore, where they have been good neighbors. And I think we heard a comment that, they didn't want to put up a tent in the back of their Wilmette restaurant because that was not appeasing to the neighborhood. So I do think, trying to cover every scenario and limit them from the start here would be challenging, especially when we're looking to have and support businesses coming into Lake Forest. There certainly needs to be a balance, however, with the residents in the area and certainly respectful to those that have come forward. I think trying to summarize, and I'd look for anybody to stop me here, but I think, is there a general consensus on the hours of operation?
Well, I just want to respectfully disagree, because the right of the petitioner to use and enjoy their property is fine, but the neighbors have a right to use and enjoy their property, and if there's only 40 days of nice weather, the neighbors have the right to keep their windows and doors open if they want, and they shouldn't have to close those because of their neighbor operating at 11:30. That's one comment. And the other comment I would make is 11:30 is pretty late, especially in this town. So I'm not comfortable with 11:30. If we ratchet it back to Coro Bistro 11 o'clock, that would be fine. That's still late, but we are, it is a balance, and I think we are asking a lot of the neighbors in this case.
Fair enough. I think there has been a restaurant there for on and off for 20 years where people have sat outside, so this isn't a new event that's coming here, and I think that was Commissioner Pasquazi's comment too. So, and again, there has to be a balance here,
that,
right?
yeah.
So,
just the
there
lateness
has
of the
been
hours.
a restaurant there. So, I did, I think it seems like there's a consensus on the music, that maybe that recommendation that staff made, that Mrs. Cerniak made, that we could direct the staff to review some music to allow at a low-level background. And, that would include maybe something that Commissioner Pick has said in terms of some sort of testing that would be allowable for that. Any other comments? Would somebody like to try and make a motion on this?
I guess I'll give it a whirl. So I'd make a motion to accept the staff's recommendation and with the addition of the recommendation to review whatever Kathy Cerniak just said.
And what about the hours of operation?
Well, I think
It's in the staff.
it's in the staff recommendation.
And just to be clear, so that would strike number one from that motion, so, correct? Because in lieu of that is going to be
Correct.
Kathy's.
That's right.
So it would be making
provision.
7 out of the 8 staff recommendations, starting at number 2.
Right.
Just for clarification, and then the directing the staff to review the allowance of low-level music in a background type.
Yep. And just to be clear, the recommendation is for hours of operation are per the staff report with the 11:30 PM on weekends.
That's right.
And that would also include then making a recommendation to the city council, right, for reviewing the ordinance, the amplified music ordinance.
That's what I heard. So there would be a recommendation on the special use permit and a second recommendation generally to really direct staff and the plan commission to go back and look at that prohibition in the code.
Which could include hours of operation for such music as well. Like if we decided 9 o'clock's the right time or 9:30, that would be part of that recommendation.
be part of the music, outdoor music.
Outdoor music
It could be part of a future discussion.
Got it.
I would suggest if you're gonna make a recommendation to the city council to review a provision in the code, you just ask that it be reviewed and not,
Got it.
Open it up, everything.
and allow parameters to be established through the subsequent discussion. Is there a second to that I don't.
I haven't, we don't have one yet.
Yeah, wait, hold on. So, just so I'm clear, because actually, as I
Just to be
listen,
clear, there should be a second before you discuss the motion.
I'll second it.
well, yeah, I want to clarify what the motion was, though, Kathy. So because I think the motion is that we're accepting the staff's recommendation, which actually does include all 8 of your recommendations. Because if we're ultimately saying, and then secondarily, we are suggesting that the city review the code, right? Wouldn't we just be accepting your recommendation first?
Yeah, but I think you gotta strike number 1
Right,
because
number one
it's
would
already
stick
in
with
the
Special
code.
use
Right,
permit,
got it.
and then
Okay.
that would,
Yeah,
it would
it's kinda
override
redundant.
if we allow background music,
Got
because
it,
this is
okay,
tied to
got
that.
it,
So we
got it,
just,
got it.
it's, yeah, that
Okay.
with the 7, and then the second recommendation that we're gonna do on the noise and background
Okay,
music.
got it.
So there
there
has
needs to be a
been,
second.
we do have a motion and a second made.
Yes.
So Kathy, would you like to?
Like me to summarize what I think I heard?
Yes,
There's a
please.
motion on the table to recommend to the city council approval of the special use permit for Sophia Steak, including conditions 2 through 8, as detailed in the staff report, which does the hours specified in those conditions, 10:30 Sunday through Thursday and 11:30 PM on Friday and Sunday evenings for activity on the patio. A separate part of that motion is a recommendation to the city council that recommend that the city council direct staff to review the current prohibition of outdoor speakers and amplified sound in the business districts and consider language that would allow low-level background music on restaurant patios in some capacity.
That is correct. You want to take the roll call vote?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Commissioner Davy?
In favor? Aye.
Commissioner Pasquesi?
Aye.
Commissioner Moorhead?
Nay.
Commissioner LaMontagne?
Aye.
Commissioner Pickus?
Aye.
Chairman Dixon?
Aye.
5 ayes, 1 nay, the motion passes.
Thank you. The next item before the commission this evening is consideration of a recommendation in support of a special use permit to allow medical office, the Skin Care Center, to occupy the first floor tenant space at 225 East Deer Path. At this point, I would like to ask commission members if there's any conflicts of interest or ex parte communications in regards to this matter.
No.
Hearing none, I will ask the petitioner to come forward to the podium for their presentation. Welcome this evening. Please state your name for the record.
Good evening, and thank you for having us this evening. My name is Katie Eldridge. I represent the Skin Care Center, which is a dermatology practice which is currently in practice here in Lake Forest. We are on, on the campus of Lake Forest Hospital, and we are looking to relocate as a neighbor right across the street from City Hall.
I'm Nick Stanford. I'm a land use and zoning attorney at Shane Banks, and I'm a Lake Forest resident. This is my first plan commission hearing before this distinguished body. So in this amazing city hall that I've never actually been in. So really excited to be here tonight and proud of the application that we put together for you here tonight.
Thank you for both being here.
Thank you. So Ms. Eldridge, do you want to describe, this is our presentation outline here.
Mr. Stanford, can I ask you to speak into the microphone? The meeting is being televised.
Yep.
Thank you.
And I also want to thank the land use and the zoning administrator, Kathy Zerniak, for all of her efforts to get us on the agenda tonight. Obviously, she is extremely knowledgeable and well-liked in the city, and you can tell. So thank you, Kathy, for all you do. Our presentation outline is as follows. We're going to talk about the existing location of the skincare center. We're going to talk about the services that they provide over by the hospital, the doctors and staff there, the small retail component, small but mighty retail component at the skincare center, and then the proposed relocation to actually just right across the street at 225 East Deer Path. So it almost couldn't be any closer. Are you able to?
No, she said we have to use this because if you want to advance, it goes to have a slide.
Oh, gotcha. So with respect to the relocation, we're going to talk about the existing site plan of the Deer Path Plaza, and then we're going to talk about the floor plan of the existing kind of the surrounding, the proposed floor plan within the two suites that we're combining, which is suites 50 and 60 of the Deer Path Plaza. We're going to talk about the proposed signage plan, the door decal plan, and the window treatment plan, and then I'll open it up to any questions. The first slide here is if it lets me come down, the existing location. So I'll let Ms. Katie Eldridge, who's been previously sworn, describe where they are now and why they want to move, what they do and why they want to move.
So our practice has been part of the Lake Forest business community for just about 25 years. Dr. Burke, who's the lead physician in the practice, has been on staff with Lake Forest Hospital since the early 90s, and we've been very happy as members of the business community here. Our lease is expiring and was not renewed by Northwestern. And so we were in search of a new location, and it was Dr. Burke's strong want and desire to stay as part of the Lake Forest community. Many of our patients are Lake Forest residents, as well as residents from the surrounding communities. So it was very important for him to stay in the village, or in the city. As you know, there are not lots and lots of available spaces, and so when we learned about the space across the street, that was his first choice. And so we have certainly done everything we can to make sure that this is a spot that will make another long-term home for our practice. Currently, as Nick said, we are on the campus of Northwestern Medical's campus. We are in one of the outbuildings in the 900 Northwest Moreland building. And as I said, our lease is expiring and is not being renewed by Northwestern. Creeping up a bit here. Our practice is a combination of what we term gen derm, which is general dermatology, cosmetics, as well as some surgical services there. Our patients who want Mohs surgery currently travel to Glenview to be seen by one of our physicians. We do have plans as our practice expands and we establish with more space here to have some Mohs surgery opportunities here for patients. It does not require anesthesia. It is all done in the office and is done on an outpatient basis.
And do you want to describe the doctors and staff?
Certainly. So Dr. Burke is, as I said, the lead physician and has been with the practice since its inception in about approximately 25 years ago. Dr. Goldberg and Dr. Sanchez also see patients here, as does Dr. Dillig. Dr. Adisa does not see patients in our Lake Forest office currently, but she is our dermatopathologist and reads slides of basically tissues of patients who have had excisions to make sure to diagnose cancers or other conditions that would need treatment for our patients. In our current suite, our retail sales for consumer goods last year was $133,700. Those range in nature from creams and lotions to sunscreen. So it is a pretty wide, as well as some makeup opportunities as well. As were many other businesses, our makeup sales declined during COVID since nobody wore makeup anymore, since nobody went anywhere, and if you did, you were wearing a mask anyway. So we are hoping to see some of that rebound. We also are confident that given our larger space here and wider visibility with passersby, that our retail sales will increase as well. So our proposed relocation, I'm guessing you are all very familiar with the location right across the street. We are very excited that this is a prominent location and has frontage on both Deer Path and Oakwood as well. The site plan, you'll see that the outline in red, we are combining sites 50 and 60 to create a larger space.
And this was the Suite 50, if you recall, it used to encompass the Coldwell Banker most recently, and then prior to that was LaSalle Bank. And then before that was, my mother-in-law tells me, was the Gap. So those were the various uses that have been there over time.
This floor plan is a little hard to see based on its size, but as you can see, we have exam rooms, there are waiting rooms, we have cosmetic and aesthetic exam rooms, required restrooms, staff workrooms, and a couple of processing rooms, one for specimens and then one for a pass-through from a patient restroom for processing of urine samples for patients who come into the office. A common example would be for some of our Accutane patients who are required to undergo monthly testing. And so when they come in, we can do their testing all in one location.
Do you want to describe the updated plan?
Yes. So the updated plan allows for the growth that we anticipate in our services to expand and offer the Mose procedure here in Lake Forest. We anticipate that that will grow as the space. We currently don't have space to accommodate that service. And so we will look to expand that with our existing physician population. The other rooms, we've got there's a staff break room, obviously, and then we've got a couple of office spaces, one for the physician workspaces, and the other for private space for our medical staff who take and return patient phone calls to protect their privacy. Oh, sure.
And then with respect to the updated plan, the plan that we submitted within the application has since been updated, and the one you're seeing on the screen is the updated plan. It is only minor modifications to accommodate the proposed changes you just heard about.
So the main entrance is where you see the main entrance today. It is on an angle at the corner of the building. And that will be for patients and visitors alike. There is another entrance in the rear which opens onto the courtyard in the back near the elevator. We anticipate that that will be our staff entrance as well as for the physicians, but obviously can use that if we were to need to quickly either evacuate the building or if somebody wasn't able to navigate the front door, we could certainly help them exit the back. But by having a single entrance in the front will allow us to monitor visitors and patients who come in through the main entrance. I think one of the things that we'd like to highlight here is that not only are we signing a long-term intend to sign a long-term lease should this special use permit be granted, we are looking at probably a 10-year lease in that space, as well as making a significant capital investment in that site. We are committed to staying in Lake Forest. We've been very happy here and want to continue our relationship with the city. Parking, we know, is always a challenge. And so there are 5 dedicated spaces within the building underneath in the parking garage that will be assigned specifically to our practice. This will allow our physicians, our day-to-day practice manager, and myself or someone else who comes to the site to be able to park in that space. The remaining employees will use the central business district parking. Our staff are already accustomed to parking in areas which are not typically those used by our patients or visitors, and they will continue to follow those guidelines. That will also be part of our employee conversation with them, and they will continue to do that as they do currently.
And there's some conditions set forth in the staff report relating to parking. Does the skincare center agree to abide by those conditions?
Yes.
And then with respect to the parking plan, so the LaSalle Bank had a parking plan approved whereby they bought, I think, 12 parking spaces. Kathy would correct me if I'm wrong, as a one-time payment. But yeah, they had 5 underground spaces as well. So we just wanted to highlight that we're utilizing pretty much the same parking plan that's been in place for the Coldwell Banker, the LaSalle Bank, and then the Gap, which is a retail use, which there was a parking study done that said the Gap had even higher parking counts than these non-retail uses. So this is a less intensive parking use than the Gap. So you want to talk about the signage
Certainly.
plan?
So the signage plan, we are very aware that there are a lot of windows there. We will, I've actually already made contact with Cecilia Lanyon with the Deer Path Art League to discuss with her some opportunities to collaborate on interesting streetscape from both the front side as well as the longer Oakwood side. We will have some treatment rooms along the Oakwood side. So we want to also balance that against protecting our patients' privacy. And so we will use that art to make that privacy screening a little more interesting for people who both drive into and see that prominent corner, as well as people who walk by on the Oakwood side.
And then are these the plaques that are existing there currently? They're just going to be with the Skincare Center logo, correct?
Yes, we will obviously comply with the design and the regulations and guidelines for signage both on the building as well as on the awnings. And there's an example of what our logo would look like on one of the buildings or the signs that attach to the building. As far as the glass on the doors in the front and in the rear, we would have decals attached to those, and as well as on the rear, indicating that the patient or public entrance is around on the front side.
You jumped the gun on this one.
Oh, I sure did. Well, it's worth repeating. As I said, I have made contact with Cecilia, and she and I will have a meeting to discuss how we can collaborate to make that both of those views a little more interesting to people, given that we will need to have some privacy screening for our patients.
So, so that's the extent of our, community commitment. Last slide.
So as part of the existing business community, as I said, we've been here for just about 25 years. We are looking forward to the opportunity to continue that business relationship, both with the city as well as with the members of the community. We do participate in, we hold skin cancer screenings. Typically, we do them in May, since this is Melanoma Awareness Month, which I'm just going to put a plug out there. If you haven't seen a dermatologist, probably not a bad idea. And we are going to hold ours until we, assuming we're successful here, until we move into our new location. And as part of an open house event, we will have our skin cancer screenings in conjunction with our open house. Again, we have been very happy as neighbors and partners in the community, and hope that we are able to continue to do that moving forward. So thank you for your consideration.
Ms. Eldridge, Ms. Stanford, thank you very much at this time for your comments. I'll turn to the city for identification of the issues.
Thank you, Chairman Dixon. This request is before you because professional offices and medical clinics are special uses in the Central Business District. This site is not in the historic district, unlike Market Square, and the site is not within what is called the area covered by the non-retail rule, which is really the core area within which the total amount of non-retail uses are limited to 10%. So this is not a site that is restricted. However, because it's a medical clinic, professional office, it does require a special use permit. As Mr. Standiford said, about 20 years ago, this was a retail business, the Gap, and then the space was occupied by a couple banks. The first non-retail use that occupied that space was tagged with needing to make a payment in lieu of parking, because at that time the space was converted from retail to non-retail. That payment, and I don't remember what the payment was at that point, I believe something like $12,000 or possibly more per parking space. That payment was made, and the code does acknowledge that that payment, once made, covers future non-retail uses for that space. The proposed use really is very consistent with the types of non-retail uses that have been in there. Again, the bank, the real estate office, the key issues in staff's review, making sure that the petitioner understood that employees cannot park in on-street spaces. We do have a number of employees in businesses in the central business district who park in those spaces and come out every 3 hours or 90 minutes, depending on where they park, and move cars. That is problematic, particularly as we try and bring more people into the central business district. So it is our understanding that they clearly know that employees that cannot be accommodated in the 5 spaces under the building will need to obtain permits, will need to park in the Oakwood lot, which is right across the street, very convenient. If that lot happens to be full, the east side of the railroad tracks, it may require walking a few blocks, but I think that happens on the hospital campus anyway. Employees would then have the opportunity to park across the street. The city does offer central business district businesses a discount. So the business itself, I don't know if the care center is going to purchase the parking passes, but the business could register as a central business district. They will receive a PIN, and then their employees can use that PIN to receive the discounted rate. The second concern for staff was the storefront windows. It is a very prominent site. The windows are large, probably initially assumed retail uses. So I really appreciate you proactively responding to that recommendation and reaching out to Cecilia. It's good to hear, and I think that some of the local not-for-profits will appreciate that space being available in part for displays. The signage for that building has already been approved. It sounds like you intend to be consistent with the approved signage sign, so signage is not an issue. You do have findings in support of this use in your staff recommendation, and then there are 5 conditions, a couple of which speak to parking, which seems to be addressed, the signage, and I will note that it is interesting that this business does have a retail component. It may be small, but there will be some sales tax generated, and certainly significant interior alterations will also generate building permit fees. So if you choose to do so, it would be appropriate to forward a recommendation to the City Council on this petition this evening. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I might just, I'll start off. I have a question. The parking in the building itself, I know there's a garage down there. It's been some time since I've been in that garage personally, but so there's 5 spots for the space. How many other spaces are down there, and what other usage do those spaces get, or I'm just wondering if you know.
Ms. Eldridge or Mr. Standiford, my understanding is you have 5 designated employee spaces, and I forget how many, I want to say 12 spaces that are generally available to customers, but I may be wrong on that number. I don't know if you know.
The space is not particularly large. I was down there once. It is not well signed. I don't think it's a place that people would automatically turn thinking it's a big space. I think there are probably 12 or 15 spaces down there, and 5 of those have been assigned to us or to the tenant of that space. 5 have been assigned to them.
So 15 total, roughly, give or take, and 5 of which are for the skin center, correct?
There may be a few of the spaces down there that are not assigned and available to customers.
Yes.
But I agree, it's not a welcoming space.
And then my other question would be on the central business district parking lot, which is currently to our west as we sit here, but currently to the north of the building by 50 feet. Would customers be permitted to park in that lot, or only designated C, B, D district tagged cars.
I believe that entire lot is permit parking. However, the parking immediately north of City Hall, there are 3-hour spaces, 90-minute spaces, and then more permit parking further.
Okay, so it seems like within this radius, just for clarification, for everybody that's listening, for employees would be able to park in this central business district parking pursuant to the PIN requirement that you just outlined, and then to the north of City Hall here, which is 75 feet from the building that we're talking about here, there's all the parking, 3-hour plus parking to the north here that would be available.
Correct. And there is on-street parking as well.
And then my other question, and then I'll turn to the other commissioners, would be in regards to the signage that we heard a little bit about and the windows that certainly the petitioner is cognizant of, and frankly, so would I be cognizant of and have a concern about, because that is obviously Deer Path is a main gateway into Lake Forest, and that building right there is one of the first buildings that people see as they come in. So, and I'm fine with what is proposed here, but just for clarification, how is that controlled? How is that governed? Signage, windows, who oversees that? That's not the purview here of the Plan Commission, but who oversees that and makes those recommendations?
There is a signage plan already approved for the building. I think in some of the photos, you note those horizontal plaques that many of the buildings, or many of the businesses in that building have. That signage package for that building has already been approved. With respect to the storefront windows, there is a condition, a recommended condition, that window treatments be explored. Certainly, we would be in communication to make sure it's something that's appropriate. We tried to do a similar approach with Caldwell Banker and really encourage them to think about historic photos of homes or displaying the homes that they were offering, and it worked to some extent. But my sense is, given the interest already expressed and the fact that they've already reached out to the Art League, that there may be an opportunity to do something more than has been in those windows, frankly, for probably 10 or more years. And certainly the last few years with the windows just papered over hasn't been a great welcome into the central business district.
Agreed,
So.
but obviously those are going to be my thought process is obviously those are going to be exam rooms, so there's some, if not all of those windows are going to be covered
Sure.
permanently, and this is a 10-year lease, et cetera, et cetera. So would it be, and I'm just throwing it out there, other than the city, is there some other, and I'm not trying to do a deep dive here with the Plan Commission on these windows, nor do I want to, but is there some other review process, not to complicate this for what is going to be a great tenant for this building, is there some other body that can review that or look at that?
My sense is with the condition as written, it talks about exploring treatments. Certainly if staff felt that anything was proposed that was out of character with the central business district, out of character with that building or what's occurred there in the past, we could certainly forward that to the Building Review Board. But I would suggest that a condition to do that in this case may not be appropriate, given the building and given the history of that building. But staff always has the discretion to forward something like that to the Building Review Board. Again, this is not in the historic district, so it is under the purview of the Building Review Board.
Thank you. I'll turn it over. I'll start on my right here. Commissioner Davey.
Have any questions?
I just had one more clarification. Kathy, you mentioned, so 20 years ago was the Gap, that generated sales tax, retail sales. Then the next business was a bank that didn't generate sales tax, and therefore they had to make a payment based on the number of parking spaces, something like that, correct? Or
Correct, a payment in lieu of based on the square footage of the space.
And that payment carried on, so future businesses, so the second business, Coldwell Banker, didn't do anything nor generate sales tax.
Correct.
So now, here we would have some sales tax generated from the limited retail business that would be done here.
Correct.
Okay.
And the other benefit is that this business would be anticipated to bring people into the central business district, and hopefully, once they park, they'll have lunch at Le Colonial or go somewhere else.
Sophia State, thank you, Mr.
A
Stern,
little
for
bit
a
of a
good
longer
point.
walk.
Commissioner Passway, that's it?
Yep.
Commissioner Moorhead?
I have one question. My understanding is that the building was up for auction on April 27th. And do we know who the current property owner is? And does that entity or party have to be a supportive or a signatory to the application? Do we have to go through them?
The application was signed by the receiver to the property, Matthew Tarshish.
Right. Was there a
I don't-
purchasing entity on the 27th, do you know?
I haven't had any information on whether there's been a sale of the property, but to
Okay.
the extent there's a new owner, as of the 27th, we can provide that paper as a supplemental submission
Okay,
with the application. We're happy to do that.
Okay,
The
fair
consent
enough.
to file the application.
okay.
Yes, sir.
I only know that secondhand, so the 27th could be wrong, but that was my understanding.
No, thank you for that information. I'll look into it. Thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Pickens?
No questions.
Commissioner Lamontagne?
More of a comment than anything else, and it just comes back to the windows, and making sure that that receives sufficient review, because the Oakwood side, right, with all of the exam rooms, I would envision that there's probably some form of a window treatment which is closed normally, and the question is, are they closed 24/7 because they're generally exam rooms, or are they allowed to be open at the end of the day? So, I point to a couple of examples. Walgreens spent a ton of money opening up the windows, but yet the staff there keeps the windows, the blinds shut most of the time, right? So not really activating with that. We've got the Freedom Healthcare Center here, which has a sign within the window, which I'm guessing is not allowed use. So there's a fine line, I get where I'm headed with this, in terms of using some of the artwork and having this thing look like a poster art along those two streetscapes. That's something that I think just needs to be a caution.
That's it? That's it. Any other comments, questions either for the city or the petitioner? Any, pardon me, any public testimony on this matter? Hearing none, I think we're moving right along. Any other final questions? Any other final comments from the petitioner? No other final comments. Anything else from the staff? Testimony and comment period is now closed. Any other discussion points that we want to have here amongst ourselves? Anybody?
I think it's a good petition.
Yeah,
I
I
fully
think it-
support it.
Thank you, Commissioner Moorhead. I would agree. I'm supportive of the petition. Obviously, the petitioners run a very successful skincare business here in Lake Forest for 25 years. It would be a nice addition to the business district to get their offices located here in the heart of the city. And I agree with the comments from the city that it would certainly draw in additional people into the business district, which would only benefit other businesses here once the activity of coming into that office happens. And the parking issues, I think, are all resolved. I think we've all stated our piece in regards to the signage and the windows. And, I certainly would ask staff to take that into high consideration, and if at any point feels as if it's necessary to take to the building review board, that they do so, make that recommendation. At this point, do we have a motion for a special use permit for the Skin Care Center to occupy the first floor at 225 East Deer Path?
Make a motion. I make a motion to approve the special use permit for the Skin Care Center at 225 East Deer Path, per the staff recommendations.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
There's a roll call vote?
Do we need a roll call?
You can just do a voice vote if you want.
Okay.
Now that we're back in person, voice votes are permitted. And seconded by Commissioner Pathways.
Yeah, she couldn't tell whose voice that was. That's why she was asking.
Okay. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Congratulations.
One more to go.
Thank
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations.
I think there's any opportunity from the public to address the Plan Commission on matters not on the agenda. Anything from staff, any other announcements? Looking forward, Kathy, can you tell us what you see maybe for June and/or July, if anything at this point?
Perhaps a code amendment relating to outdoor sound in the business district.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
There are a couple small subdivisions that we're hearing about, don't have anything filed on those yet. So I don't have agenda items teed up for the coming meetings, but we will give you advance notice.
And then just to remind everybody, when's the June meeting?
June 8th, thank you.
June 8th. Okay, thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So
So
moved.
moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.